Today we're talking about the Power BI, storytelling, perfect partners for impact. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting session because I think you're going to be blown away by the insights, by the knowledge, and certainly by the experience that we've got. We have got a surprise guest, which I'm super excited about. So look out for that. And then just to give you guys some insight, next week we're going to be covering off an amazing topic called the power of pink. It's some research that Skillsoft did around women in IT. And we've secured some unbelievable panelists from Sassel, Old Mutual, and both two ladies from Old Mutual actually. And really just to talk about their journey in IT and how they've reskilled and upskilled themselves in that journey of IT. And then you can see the rest there and look out for the invitations. So with no further ado, context for today, and those of you that were on the session with Agatha a few weeks ago, she talked about this data and the World Economic Forum, and I mean essentially, looking at the World Economic Forum research, anytime you see it, you see top roles, data, analytics, scientists, skills, analytical thinking, problem solving, all kinds of things that have a lot to do with big data specialists. That was the one I was looking for, big data. So the topic is on trend, and I'm super excited to introduce the panel. So if I can start, Misha, with yourself, you can introduce, and then Paul and then Carol, introduce yourselves, and we'll kick off with the session. Thank you.
Thank you as well, Linda. Yeah, I think from my side, as you can see from my illustrious and confusing background, I'm not from MTN.
Not today.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, I joined MTN in 2019. I still consider myself a newbie. Certainly, my team doesn't think so. But yeah, I work in the HR space under the GLLI banner, which is Global Learning or Global Leadership and Learning Innovation. So GLLI. We sometimes refer to ourselves as GLE because we are the happy hackers as well. But I mean, that's just my short intro.
Thanks, Misha. Thanks for joining us. And it's always such a pleasure to have you on these panels. So from a client perspective, much appreciated. Paul, from your side?
Thanks, Linda. Yeah, my name is Paul. I am head of impact at LRMG, and what we do is, well, we measure impact and we measure value. And we do that in an environment which is quite interesting because as opposed to some other technology deployments, the learning deployment is often very dependent on voluntary use. So there is also a understanding of why people want to use it and how we want to sort of make it attractive and advertise the things that people find attractive. So it's measurement, but it's also communicating with the audience and partnering with the people that are part of the communications side of things. So yeah, that's a nutshell.
Awesome, Paul. Only Paul could put attractive and data in the same sentence and get away with it. But yeah, awesome, Paul. Thank you so much. Carol.
Goodness, I realized my mic was off before I started talking too much. So you didn't have to say you're on mute. Okay, my name is Carol. I'm part of the Impactful Specialist Solutions team, specifically in the user adoption space. But my background is definitely in training, specifically more Microsoft Office training. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. And when they need someone to train Power BI, I'm one of the people that they sometimes call on.
Oh, cool. So good to hear. And Carol, I'm going to prime everyone. Ask Carol the tough questions.
You say that every time. I think I'm going to
Yeah, but I'm
have
still
to deal
challenging
with
and waiting for someone to come with a tough question that you can't answer, And
no,
if you
but you
really
don't want to see
ask...
me crying.
Okay, cool. Thanks, folks. So yeah, fantastic panel. Thank you for that. And we'll meet our millennial. Oh no, yeah, we'll meet our young guest soon. Okay, so let's kick off. So Misha, power of BI and the importance of BI in the world we live in today. Tell us a little bit how you're leveraging data in your world at MTN. So we've got three people on the panel. Misha, who's the client, Paul, who deals with the client, and Carol, who's the trainer. So Misha, give us a sense of a day in the life of, data in Misha's world.
Sure, Linda, thanks. I mean, I'm gonna basically elaborate on what I was saying earlier as well,
Mm.
because I mentioned the GLLI, and part of that I is the innovation, right? So we're looking at innovating learning methods and technologies, and well, obviously this is more relating to me in my consulting hat, and I mean there's also the learning ecosystem enhancement, which is looking at integration to organizational platforms as well as the vendors. And then I also look at, providing analytics and insight, which are separate things, on organizational skills and development. And then I think the fourth one is then the change adoption regarding the strategic drive, so we've gone to Ambition 2025 from Bright, we shifted from telco to techco. We have digital transformation because of the fourth industrial revolution, and now we're looking at critical skills. And that speaks towards an agile delivery in terms of rapid response using first class, as we like to say it, and how second to none technologies and delivery frameworks. Using insightful analytics to guide decision making, using data to find opportunities and obviously highlight the realities. And then in terms of the consulting hat, on first class, once again, second to none, learning experiences, and in particular career growth experiences.
Wow, that's stunning. I mean, yeah, sure, NTN as it is, but I mean that's just the way you talk about it. And I was a business partner, I'd be thinking, okay, well, how do I get you involved and where do I get you involved? So thanks for that, Misha. And that's just your day job, eh?
Yeah, that's just what I do.
Is that 8 to 9 in the morning?
When you see the sign in the clouds, yeah, that's me.
Cool. And Paul, from your side, power and importance of data in the world. I mean, you deal a lot with the LRMG clients. Give us an insight into your space.
Yeah, I think that just listening to Moshe, it talked so much about what it is that we actually want to understand as well. I want to go back to just a quick one about data and beauty. And like beauty, data is, the value of data is in the eye of the beholder. And we need to understand. We need to understand the beholder, if I can put it that way. We need to understand our client. We need to understand the what's important in that space. And Moshe, I mean, you were able to articulate a bunch of things now that were really, really useful to understand, to say, we know what the strategy of our business is, we know what our role is, and we know that as L&D people, the initiatives that we put in place, how does that contribute into that role? And until we understand what is important to our client and what is important to everybody who sponsors this initiative, we can't really do our job. But so that's very much the first part, is understanding what is it that how we want to articulate value, and then to go and look for evidence for that, because the evidence sometimes hides in the funny places. It hides in the obvious places, and we have to look for that. But then you also have to look at the non-obvious places, and sometimes it's just a matter of I don't know, zenning a little bit with the data and seeing what pops up, what's unusual, what's surprising, what's what didn't you see before, and then interrogating that and seeing what does it mean to us.
Yeah, no, cool, Paul, thanks. And I love that evidence hides in the funny places. And I mean, the whole point of this was to talk about data, but also to talk about the storytelling, because data on its own is just data, it's just a number, And Carol, from your side, trends in the training relative to tools. And I know when we briefed for the session, you said, what do you mean? But I mean, what kind of stuff? You the cold face, you teaching people about data. Well, typically, what are you seeing? You're on mute now, Carol.
Thank you. I'll try not to do it a second and third and fourth time, but I can't guarantee it.
Okay, no problem.
Well, first of all, we're definitely seeing an uptake in the need for Power BI training and data training.
Yeah.
And it's not coming from people who aspire to be these fancy terms, data analysis,
Yes.
all those ones. It's actually the people who, can I call them in this case, the lay people, the person sitting in finance, the person sitting in learning and development, or whatever sector. They understand the business. They want to get the data insights and they want to be able to use the tools out there and not have to say to a data analyst, can I have this? And 6 months later, they actually get it. They want to work with it immediately. So that's the one side. And I think we also seeing that people are not always aware of how powerful even something like Excel can be. Yes, we want to talk Power BI. It's a wonderful tool. I absolutely love it. There are issues in terms of licensing as to what you can do with it. But if you have Excel, that is just a wonderful starting point. Something called Power Query is a wonderful tool that people just don't know about. So we want to start telling them about it.
No, cool, absolutely, awesome. And I think, you know, that's the point is, and it's something we spoke about in the prep session, you know, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, is that be kind to yourself, be kind to your future self, and know your data well enough to be able to not rely on people to give you data and insights in that. So quick fire round. And Carol, let's start with you and then go to Paul and then to Moshe. What are the data skills we need today as L&D practitioners?
Well, I think you need to understand data and how data structures. Unfortunately, that is a part we cannot ignore. Even though you want the pretty charts and all of that, it all starts with data. So if your data isn't structured correctly, I went through an exercise recently where people now have realized how bad their data actually is. But they never, the people, sorry, just to say, the people putting in the data didn't know how it was going to be used. So to them, making a small little error was not a big thing, but it does affect the results. So,
and the classic saying of garbage in, garbage out as well, you know. So okay, so the data structure, so understand, I mean, is that a skill or is it something that we need to try and go through to learn about?
I think it's something you can teach people, and it goes hand in hand with seeing what, okay, this is what I want to achieve in Power BI, but this is where I'm going to start, and understand that connection, how you get from your data to those pretty charts that tell you everything about your business.
Yeah. It's possibly all those funny formulas that I often get in Excel that Excel basically tells me I've buggered up the formula, but anyway. And Paul, from your side, quick fire skills you think L&D folks, particularly knowing we've got probably about 120 of them on the call?
I think Carol, what you said about lay people is such an interesting point, because the skill that you need is you need to understand your industry. You need to bring that to the table. You know, so if a finance person comes in with knowledge of finance, you know, they're going to look at data from that perspective. And I think for us as L&D people, we sometimes know our L&D space, but how well do we know our industry? How well do we know the things that end up in the annual report? You know, and how do we relate what we do in that? So knowledge of our business, knowledge of what our world is really, really important. And then you have to marry that. Carol, I can't agree with you more around just getting the basics right. You know, structuring of data. You know, what does quality look like? So that, because if you get that right, you make it so easy for yourself to do things. But if you don't get the basics right, you're gonna be stuck on first gear forever. So I think that is a very important element of it. And then subsequent to that, then you can start looking at the tools and so on. But that's almost the secondary bit. You need to understand, you know, what are the elemental things that we use to measure, where do we get them, and how can we get them consistently, so that we are credible when we start talking about them.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. That's such a good point you make around the basics, you know, and then the tools happen. You know, it's learning how to ride a bike before you ride a motorbike, as an example. And Misha, from your side, I mean, you knee deep in data, academies and your capability builds and that. I mean, what in your sense, what are the L&D skills that people need?
Yeah, so I think from my side, you know, I want to maybe take it back to where I started, right?
Yeah.
And I call this my Elvis and Beavis the Butthead. So for me, Excel is Elvis, and Power BI is more Beavis the Butthead, because you butt your head a lot into the wall sometimes. Whereas, you know, with Elvis, you can really feel comfortable to dance with the data. and really show out some outstanding stuff. So I see in the chat as well, people are quite a fan of Excel. So I think, if you already know how to work in the Excel space, you're really well positioned for data science, because it's really more of the same principle, just elaborated at scale. And I mean, if you have bad quality of data in Excel, it's going to be the same no matter what tool you use, right? And that's really where I resonate with Carol's point, because on top of that, you're also going to have a data governance issue if your data quality is not correct. So the moment you try to apply restrictions or security parameters, the quality of data is going to throw you out. So I think that obviously has to just go without saying. But I think, from our side, the foundational skills are very much important around data science in terms of the mathematical skills. They just help you with your formulas, obviously, just to understand some of that syntax around, BODMAS or BOMDAS, as some people would say, brackets of multiplication, division.
I'm just going into the nervous.
Some people are having a traumatic
about
experience when you mention that word.
BODMAS, yes.
It's more like BOMDAS.
But I mean, how did you, so go through that, but take us through your, where did you start? Where did you just, did you start with getting a distinction for maths and matric?
So from my side, that's exactly what I'm referencing it from, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, these mathematical skills are things I picked up in matric.
Yep.
It's not like I was the greatest at it, but it was just my curiosity for problem solving that kind of kept me, attached to it. That whole issue about solving for X. Luckily, I'm married now, so I don't think I'll be dealing with any more X's. But I may have a few more Y's, and that's where. And that's where, that tenacity is going to need to come in around just making sure you finish what it is that you're curious about. And, from a tertiary level, I would say programming is something that really brought me closer. Something like SQL was something that really got me into sort of the fundamentals of working with data from a programming perspective. From a GUI perspective, I remember there was MS Access, Microsoft Access.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, remember those days, and we were given.
You're too young to remember those days.
I guess maybe I'm also giving away my age as well. But I mean, this Microsoft Access was supposed to be somewhat of an Excel on steroids as well. So I mean, Microsoft also had a few iterations around how to deal with data, but I really do like Power BI because of how it came out on top. Because when I started going into Excel, what I worked on first was, working with pivot tables, and then, using slices to manage those pivot tables across multiple sheets. And then, that's where I realized I can do more batch operations using Power Query. And that's where I kind of had an epiphany moment, because I was like, wait, but Power BI also has Power Query. And like, there we go. I can actually move into Power BI as my transition. Awesome. And that's where I saw that opportunity and started searching for more info, around Power BI, what the data science practices and methods are, so I can cover my theory as well, because that's also very important in terms of, you may not be exposed to certain things. And when you try to do things at a later stage, you're like, wait a minute, actually, I should have done it like this back then. So that theory is really where it kicks in. And I guess due to that programming experience, I could add to my Power BI knowledge with DAX. When I started using DAX expressions, I think that's where I was like, okay, I think I'm getting this Power BI thing.
I think you've got it spot on. But your story's so beautiful, and Bridget's kind of summing it up. You need your own TV show talking just about BODMAS and Elvis and Beavis and that. But I think what's so beautiful about your story, and all of you guys, you're so enthusiastic about data. In some people's worlds, it's really a 4-letter word. And you guys, you're embracing it. You're curious. You're showing all of those trends and skills that just will set you up from a data perspective to really showcase. And Carol, it's an awesome lead in. So I'm going to give you your 10 minutes, Carol. I challenge Carol with, you've got 10 minutes to show us a quick masterclass on Power BI and a quick way to start on what I call Plan B, which is Power Query. But I know, folks, the point of putting something like this into a session like this with Carol is really to show you that I don't think it's that complex. I taught myself Power BI, and I mean, I'm so proud of that. It's scary. But point is, it's not complex. And what I've asked Carol to do is try and demystify this. So Carol, over to you. Your 10 minutes of show us all, and we're all going to be Power BI.
Now?
Yeah, we're going to be Power BI experts.
Okay, now computer's decided that now's the time to do something funny.
Oh my gosh. That's
give me a sec. Okay, let's
okay.
find the share button would be good. And let's see if it will now share. Okay.
There we go.
Okay. So I'm actually going to start with the Power Query if I can.
Okay, just share this. Yeah, there we go. All right.
Okay, there. Can you see a bit of a dashboard?
There we go.
Okay. Because yes, Power BI is a wonderful tool, but you know, if you for some reason don't have access to it, whatever, you can at least start with Excel. And I think most people know how charts work, have some basic understanding of charts. Now, what I'm showing you actually comes from an example that I've recently worked with a client. In their company, they were part of the L&D and had to report on what had been trained and etc. And their problem was that they had each region would do their own report, and then the central head office had to go and take all this information, combine it together to get these beautiful charts that I'm showing you here. Mm-hmm. And it involved a lot of copy and paste and a lot of frustration and hours of work. Never mind that people were also then breaking their templates. So just very briefly, what I did, and I'm just going to show you for them, and this is just a simulation of it, is if you look here on the left, and that's actually the right, but don't worry about that, you'll see that this Excel spreadsheet is actually connecting to other Excel spreadsheets. You can see Durban, PE, and Pretoria, and those three, though they had more than that, is all being combined into something called All Regions. And that, so I'm not going to go through details how I did that, but that is done in, and I'm just going to go show you, this is now Power Query that I'm loading and showing you. So this is a kind of like a behind the scenes where you say, okay, here's my data, but is the data the way I want it to be? Okay, and there's all sorts of things you can do here. I really don't have time in my 10 minutes to show you, but you can choose which columns you want. You can do filtering and all sorts of manipulation on your data here, and you only ever have to do it once. Okay, in this case, so if you look on the left, we've got the 3 separate regions combining into an all regions, and that's actually the data that we are working with. In this example, I actually brought it into the spreadsheet and showed it, but you don't have to even do that because I don't know if you know how many rows Excel actually contains. It's just over 1 million. And for some people, that would be a problem. You can't actually fit
some computers that would be a problem.
Yeah, so you don't actually have to bring the data in, but for them, for things they do, it was okay to do that. And basically now we've set it up that every month, once the individual regions have finished their reports, the person that I've done this for literally has to come, right click on here, choose refresh, let it do its refresh, and that's their job done for the day. They can then go home early that day, because once that's been refreshed and we've got the latest data, this dashboard obviously is connected to all that data through various formulas, and it will just update.
And that's Power Query, so that's Excel. So there's no license constraints and that type of stuff.
No, if you've got Excel, you've got this, and it all starts from going up here to data, going to get data, and whoops, sorry. And finding, is it from an Excel file? If you've got permissions, you're even allowed to connect directly to a SQL Server database, though most companies wouldn't allow that for various security issues. It could be a SharePoint list that you're connecting to, something in Salesforce. It's almost endless, really, that what you can connect to. And then you, once the data's in, or you've just got your connection, you are now working with normal Excel, pivot tables, charts, everything that you know is available to you. And you can also bring in multiple sources, and through something called a data model, create connections between those sources. Okay, so that is briefly a Power Query.
So that's Power Query off Excel, Plan B to Power BI, essentially.
Yeah. Now, Power BI actually is a free tool. So I just want to get an example open. There are some issues in terms of sharing what you've created with others. Then some licensing things will come into play. But what I'm showing you now is actually a free tool.
Okay.
So this is Power BI. It also obviously starts off with connecting to data. So if you have a look here, there is your get data with, again, a whole range of ways of connecting to the data. There's also a similar Power Query component to it. I'm just going to go into transform data. And this is Power BI's Power Query. Okay, which you may say, okay, well, that looks similar to what I just showed you. And there's a few extra things that you can do. It's a little bit fancier. But again, lots of ability to manipulate the data. And again, you only need to tell it once what you want to do with the data. From then on, you just tell it to refresh and it goes through. I don't know if you can see here on the right, there's something called steps, and it will just repeat those steps every time you refresh and your data is sorted. Okay. And then after you get to then do the fun part, which is putting together your well, a lot of people will call this dashboard, but strictly speaking in Power BI, it's called a report, but let's not be pedantic. And you use all these, what you call visualizations. A lot of them you'll recognize, different charts. There's some really fancy ones. There's something like this one at the top called a card, which is just to give you a figure of whatever is relevant. This is obviously to do with sales. You can also set up things showing targets. So how close are we to achieving our target that we set for ourselves? And then you've got the typical sort of charts. And if I have a look at this green sort of area at the bottom, this is what we call a slicer. So it's got filtering capability. So I can say, all right, these are different categories of product that we sell. So if I click on seafood, I don't know if you noticed, the chart is now changing. And so these two, the pie chart and the line chart, are now only showing me the seafood sales. The top hasn't changed, and that's something you can control. What needs to change when you click on something?
The visualization.
Yeah. So if I just switch to grains and cereal, there you go, you will see that it will change. And obviously from there, you can then start getting your story and figuring out why in June your sales were a bit of a disaster. Okay. But it's beautiful because you can even, like this pie chart, this bluish, whatever color, green color is for the Europe region. If I click on it, you'll see even that affects, like now that total revenue at the top is for the Europe, and okay, that one I've said not to change. This is all changing. So there's a whole lot of wonderful things that you can set up. And if you understand charts in Excel, it's not that difficult to pick this up and where you have to go and do things. You can also do maybe not, just trying to change here, something a bit more like a table, but you have that concept that you know probably from Excel, conditional formatting, where you can either do what we call data bars or these little icons that represent some sort of good or bad line total. Right? So those are your sort of typical. I just want to also show you this other one. Some fancier things that you can do in Power BI. So this is what we call a scatter chart. And just to help you with what's going on here, the data is to do with income and life expectancy. So at the bottom is average income per person, and up the side is life expectancy. So if I wanted to see, has income got any influence on the life expectancy of people in a particular country? So this scatter chart has this play ability. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it. And you'll see now, if you look at the top, it's moving through the years, and it's now showing me, you know, how that bubble is moving. Now, the purplish one is South Africa. If I click on it, and if I can just click on it before it moves away, you'll see that it will show me the trend. So we can see now that for this time period, we suddenly had a drop in life expectancy, and now we're going up again. You can see our average income is pretty much on the same. And if you look at because you also have these things called tooltips, I can see that's year 2002, 2003. Now, what it doesn't necessarily tell you is why that happened. So that's where your business person, because I can put together a beautiful dashboard without knowing the business, but is it telling the business anything? So, you know, someone will have to look at, and maybe people can also think for themselves, why in those years was South Africa's life expectancy going down? Okay. And then also, am I up my 10 minutes up yet?
Yeah, you've got 20 seconds.
Okay, so this is just another one to look at income. How does life expectancy, what influences life expectancy to increase? So based on the data, it says if income goes up by, what's that, just over 19,000, your life expectancy goes up by 5 years. And that's all based on data. So that's sort of a bit of insights that it can try to generate for you. Okay.
Well done, Carol. 10 minutes offline. Everyone's Power BI expert now, I'm sure. No, listen, it's proper. And I mean, you're getting some serious applause. So that's just fantastic.
Thank you.
Paul, you know, if we bring Paul into this conversation and so give us a sense, you know, we've gone data, we've gone skills, we've looked at data, the tools. Tell us a little bit about your views on storytelling. So what do you think people need to think about? Because all of this data is great, but if you can't tell the story, it's meaningless. What's your sense, Paulie?
Yeah, I think the one point, at the risk of sounding like a stuck record, is know your audience. You know, who are you telling the story to? So I'm not going to make that point too much. The other important point is, especially in larger organizations today, is know who else might be telling the story. Because, you know, for us as people with often direct access to data, we tell a story, but sometimes our data also finds its way into data warehouses, and there are other dashboards that are built by other teams and so on. And if we are not on the same page as others who might also be telling stories, and suddenly you get a question of, oh, but you know, they're saying this and we're saying that, and sometimes it's just how we define the data, things like that. You know, you get into an idea where everybody starts questioning the credibility of the whole effort, and then you take months to recover from that just to get back to where you started. So know who else is telling the story, and make sure that you're aligned in terms of what you read from the data, because it's very easy to read different things based on your perspective. I think it's also I think it's okay sometimes, you know, not to. And it's going to sound weird, but not to be right, because you know what is right anyway. You know, I often don't have a full view of what's important to my audience, and then in that case, if you don't know, just pick something and put it out there. Because what's interesting to you more often than not, you might highlight something that your audience didn't realize is important to them. You know, and I've seen it many times where you start with the basics and you start telling a story with something that was interesting for you. Sometimes your client or your audience will tell you, not that interesting. Fine.
Or they'll pick something else that you never thought of, and you go, oh, yes.
Exactly. But so often you find that, you know what, it's something that nobody thought about, and you expose something, either an opportunity or a risk, so you have to start with something, and you have to highlight it if you don't have the idea with your audience. Then another thing is make it easy for people who are not part of your WhatsApp group to understand it. You know, we are often talking to our own community. We are L&D people, we talk to each other. So we talk the same language. But, I mean, we had a conversation earlier this afternoon where a piece of evidence is also shared with non-L&D audiences. Now, somebody there may not understand what the importance of learning hours is, or it may not understand what the importance of this or that is. So try and articulate things in a way that's easy for the in-group to understand, and make it also easy to interpret. So make sure that you say, you know, when you put a number out there, is it good or bad? You know, how does it compare to another period of time? How does it compare to, you know, another area in the business or the industry or something like that? Just so that it's easy for somebody to interpret that. I always think my model is our CFO. I don't think he's on the call today, but Oman always, you know, he's got this mental process that I don't even think he knows he does. But when he looks at a series of numbers, He always does a calculation in his head, and he will pick out something that doesn't make sense. And I think I'm always imagining him looking at my data and saying, what might not make sense to him. Because you might be going over here with your story and I say, hold on, that number there, it doesn't make sense. So try and imagine those numbers that don't make sense and anticipate it and tell the story around those numbers.
Yeah, no, thanks, Paul. That's good insight. Mush, I see you nodding your head there. I mean, give us one or two real stories of engagement with stakeholders in M10 where you present the data and you're so proud and you've pulled an all-nighter with Beavis and Elvis and the stakeholder goes, nah, doesn't make sense or whatever. Just give us one or two stories. And then Misha, if I can ask you to prep yourself.
So sure, happy to do that. But I think I just wanted to also elaborate on Paul's point because, around, stakeholders, the brief that you receive is the beef.
Yeah.
The brief from the stakeholders is the beef. So don't be a chicken to find the spark, because the spark could be the flame to all of the change that could actually pivot the business, if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
Because data is multi-layered, and I mean, going back to the whole onion analogy,
Yes.
an onion is multi-layered as well. And I mean, if you look at that, if you chop that onion wrong, you'll be crying before you get to enjoy your meal. And if you know the techniques for it, using data science or some sort of science, then you know that you can obviously look forward to the meal without those tears. And really, that's what the brief is. It's what the stakeholders are saying to you to say, look, we want you to sort for X, and you need to find the recipe through your wrangling of the data to deliver, or serve to the stakeholder the optimal experience. And to Paul's point, it may not always be what they want to see, but it's what the data is saying, and that's about as optimal as it will be. So it's not, we're not just doing data science for the sake of data science, like a chef does it for the sake of cooking. It's really towards the organization's objective, and that's really what the storytelling should be about. So, from my example on this, I was tasked with this, right? And we looked at, the talent in the organization. This is probably one of my biggest projects in this regard, where we're looking group-wide across, the 15,000 plus, 14,000 plus employees that we have, to say, look, who's upskilled themselves in these 5 critical skill areas. Now, obviously, bear in mind, these haven't even been mapped. So I'm now reverse mapping or reverse engineering through the wrangling to find that sort of low level question. But then upon presenting the results, it's a matter of, no, it's not that I just asked you to find who's actually been upskilled. I'm trying to find where we can get people into roles.
Gosh. Okay. So, yeah.
So, you went on a single tangent to say, okay, we've got these many people upskilled and this critical skill, and the board is saying, no, what we want to know is how many people can we hire from that report that you've indicated to us. And that's where you got to go back and say, what did I look at the right expertise level from my wrangling? Did I include that as a filter? And otherwise you're going to have to go back even further in your data pipeline to now find that information and then add it to your pipeline, which just adds extra amount of work. So it's really about understanding that brief or the beef.
The beef, brief is the beef. Omri's getting hungry for a Steers burger in the chat. So folks, this is the one element of the session that we wanted to bring in and introduce Misha, who is a data analyst at LRMG. Essentially, hello, Misha. This is the person, this beautiful 26-year-old, this is the person that is aspiring to be a data analyst, to be a data scientist. And when Misha and I briefed, I said, well, pull together your CV. Well, not your CV, your bio. And goodness me, this is what came out. So Misha, welcome. Lovely to have you.
Hi, Lynn. Thanks for having me.
Sure. And Misha, I mean, I suppose for me, the question here is, you know, why data? Where did you start with data? And what was your, you know, you can go through the bio, folks. You can see B Absoxa Hons, B Psych Equivalent Hons, Psychometric Intern, Behavioral Economist Gibbs, and she's only 26, I'm just saying. Why data? Where did it start, Misha? Tell us a little bit about your love for DATA.
I actually hated maths in high school, and you know, after studying psychometry and doing my internships in psychometry and behavioral economics, I became fascinated with the fact that we can measure and put numbers to behavioral competencies and how people use those competencies in organizations. So that's where it started. Very exciting journey as well.
No, it's a huge exciting journey, you know, and I know you've done a lot of work with me on the Learning Health Index and pulling that data together. And I remember saying to you the one time, you said, no, Lindsay, we'll pull together this Excel. I said, we want Power BI. And truth, Bob, within a month, Misha had taught herself Power BI. So, and Paul, I'm going to weave you in here because Paul is Misha's line manager. I've got that right, hey? Yes. And so tell us a little bit about what attracted you to Misha's bio, Paul, when you were looking for skills. And folks, the reason why I'm putting Misha up here, because here is a candidate, here is a sample of Moshe. If you're reskilling people, this is the kind of profile you want to reskill on. If you're looking for aspirational people to fill scarce talent profiles, you know, this is the type of profile you're looking for. So, Paulie, give us a sense.
Linda, I think the question is, you know, we have data and we have lots of things that we have at hand that we can look at, but we also can ask questions. Yeah. And I think the ability to ask good questions and how and when and where to position the asking of the questions. I think when I saw the combination of psychometry with behavioral science and combined with a passion for data. Misha, I remember our first interview, you know, very clearly, and it came so much through, you know, how passionate you are about data. And I just thought that's a magical combination, and you know, there was no way that Misha, you were going to work somewhere else after that.
And Misha, tell us, so you talk about, I mean, and what's beautiful is you talk about mentors. You talk about the growth where you wanted to go. You talk about being kind to your future self. Tell us a little bit about some of the mentor experiences you've had that have helped you develop, you know, your career, your short career, from a data perspective.
I'm very close with someone who used to work with data and analytics at AB InBev, and when I started my career, I was very doubtful of my skill set and how I could apply it in the workplace. And he definitely gave me some reality checks as to this is what you should be, this is what you should be studying, this is what you should be exploring. Do the GitHub projects, do like practice as much as you can. And just the importance of having a mentor and networking. I've found so many mentors within LRMG and outside of it. It really helps you value your contribution as well as what you bring to the organization.
And it's a key element, in my view, of capability academies that are building data capability, you know, that mentoring piece. You know, you talk about, and I know we're close to wrapping up, but you talk about your future self. You know, when we were briefing, we were talking about being kind to your future self. And just to go through this, tell us a little bit, you know, what your world of your future self. So people like me who are much older can also have some kind of aspiration in terms of being kind to my future self around data.
I like to tell myself that data is not that complicated. It's numbers. We have computers. We can get through this. But some things that I definitely need to do are, I need to learn how to use Python so that I can manage my data better. I need to get better at visualizations as well as refine my SQL skills. I also need to work on communication and expectation management. It's a really, it's a really holistic view that you need to have. And I mean, if I could do it online, anybody can. I didn't know where to start. I got the advice and I just did it.
And you went out there and did it. And Misha was talking earlier about his SQL skills as well. I mean, that's obviously something that's good in the mix of building the data capability. Misha, thank you. And I know this was something that you were very nervous of, but you have done superbly well. So thank you so much for popping on and for sharing. Connect in with Misha. She's not on the market, so she's not open for recruitment, but she's happy to talk to you about building data capability skills. Okay. So Paul, I know we seem to have lost Misha. Misha, if you are here, put your camera on. He might have had some signal challenges. Just in terms of summary and wrap. Oh, yeah. Cool. In terms of summary and wrap,
just
you know.
By the way, Linda, since Misha works with a lot of data, one thing I wanted to say is working for MTN, she'll never need to buy data again.
She's working for LRMG, just saying. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, in terms of just Paul, Carol, Misha, yourselves, you know, being kind to yourselves, we talked about understanding the data from the get-go, teaching yourself data skills. I really don't want to go into commercial here, but I do want to bring something in that Charlotte brought to my attention this morning, you know, around a program that's impactful are actually running at NTN. And this is the type of stuff in my mind that I think people need to be thinking about in terms of building data capability. So yeah, it's something to think about there. The other thing that, you know, quickly, Carol does she does it one day, not a 10-minute introduction to Power BI. And then Paulie, talk us through, you know, the Aspire journey. Says, I know you went through an Aspire journey and you taught yourself data there. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think then I wanna highlight actually something else. The one thing, and to talking to Misha's journey around learning Python, for example, you know, when you start going with more sophisticated tools, one of the biggest headaches is, you know, I go to Google, you know, you learn a bit here, you learn a bit there, but then, you know, you're not in a neatly packaged solution like Microsoft anymore. You know, yes. So you have probably 70 libraries of Python that you need to line up, and the version that the Google thing is on and the one that you're on is different. So nothing makes sense in your environment from what you have there. And one of the things that I really, really find valuable in Skillsoft is the practice labs that we have, because it sorts all of that out for you. So all of those things are just aligned to the instruction, and you don't have, you know, you can spend days just getting your environment sorted out. So that's the one thing that I think I found quite useful about for our clients who have Skillsoft. Please go and look at that, work with that. And then if we look at the Inspire journeys, it really gives you a comprehensive set of skills that you can learn. I personally would probably tweak them a little bit, and you can create a custom Aspire journey from that, just because it's so comprehensive sometimes that there are things that I think we don't need everything. We can sort of fast track our way towards the essence of it, and very happy to have a conversation around what that might mean.
Yeah, and I suppose it's, you know, it's what we call in LRMG drinking your own champagne. Oracle used to say eat your own dog food, but yeah, and I mean that's a perfect example. You know, the practical elements of it are probably what's key. So yeah, you know, these hours just go so quickly. Hey, so I'm going to ask, just for a wrap up, I see there's lots of chats in the chatter. If anyone has got any questions they want to pose to the panel, otherwise we're just going to give a wrap up, and maybe Carol, Paul, Moshe, from yourselves, just maybe one note to future self around data that you'd want to do as a shout out to the audience. Carol, let's start with you.
I'm not sure to answer you, but one thing I just want to say is someone said, oh, I don't think my skills are good enough. Yes, don't be scared to start. It's really not. You don't have to get into the DAX formulas and all of that to start off with. You can start off simply and build on from there.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Don't be scared to start. Paul, from your side?
Yeah, I think if you give yourself some time, you know, focus time is always a little gift that you can give yourself. And if you can carve out a few hours just to immerse yourself into something, you'll be surprised at what comes out at the other end. You don't need days sometimes to get to value.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Paul. And Moshe, from your side?
I think I wanted to just pick up from what Misha was saying around you know, she didn't necessarily have affinity for maths in her earlier days. And I think that's really great because, you know, what I'm hearing is that when she found her why, you know, around what the purpose was, that's where she started to see, you know, the what that sat behind it. And that's where the numbers became more relevant to address that. So I think it's really looking around, you know, your environment and thinking around, you know, where do you see numbers having a definition for you, and you know, which part would you like to play in that? Because that's really where your curiosity lies, and that's what's going to help you to build to where you want to be the data science that you can be.
Yeah,
Data scientist,
brilliant. No, that's brilliant. Thanks, Misha. And I mean, as usual, it's just incredible insight. So thank you so much for that. I think, folks, my takeaway would be is, you know, if you look at Misha's profile and you look at how deliberate she is and how structured she is and how very clear she is with where she's going and what she wants to do, that's also probably something to think about. So thank you all kindly. It's been a fabulous 1 hour.